If you've come looking for a bizarre story, you've came to the right place. It's a dark one, so first I need to share a quick disclaimer that material in this video may be sensitive to some listeners and viewers. Also, to please be mindful of any victims and their families. Thank you. This case takes place in the Soka Forest of Nigeria, 2014. Imagine this if you can. Have you ever explored the woods and came across an abandoned shack, house, or any structure capable of housing someone? Oftentimes these may be abandoned, or, if occupied, people living there preferably wanting to live remote and not disturbed. A cautious mind may wonder, what if there is a habitant? What if they are looking for people? What if they kidnap them and bring them back? Well, this house is just that. And it's more than one person living in this building in the Soka Forest. The people here are running an operation of kidnapping people, starving them, and trading them. What if I told you it's worse than that? Well, let's start with the first question. How did it get discovered? The Ibadan Okadas are citizens local to the town of Ibadan. They provide a motorcycle taxi service. They act as a club of riders who also escort people around their town. They are a fairly large local group to their town. The Okadas are all known for carrying cell phones for their work. Now, with this being said, it became strange when two Okadas went missing in the area without any clue. That is until a third Okada went missing by the name of Lon Ray. One may wonder where the police were in all of this, but we'll come back to that. I have to stress this detail to you. The third person to go missing from the Okada is named Lon Ray, and on the day he went missing, he was seen by the other fellow Okada at a usual meetup spot in the town. After the Okadas were finished with their meeting, Lon Ray was seen leaving the town on his bike with two people on the back. Again, the Okada typically only escort people around town for business, and Lon Ray was seen exiting the town with these two passengers that nobody knew. Lon Ray was now the third Okada to go missing, and this is where things get muddy. Lon Ray wakes up in a panic. He was trapped in an underground cell with other people. In a reasonably frightened call for help to his fellow Okada, he tries explaining where he is, but they couldn't understand him. Lon Ray was so frightened that he couldn't control his voice. But once they were able to calm him down, he was able to speak better. Lon Ray was in an underground cell and could hear people walking above him. However, since he was underground, he didn't know his precise location. Thankfully, he had a second cell phone that wasn't confiscated. His captors managed to take just about everything else. And now, underground, he was able to share vague details about where he was taken to. A group of Okada mounted up on their bikes and headed towards the forest while still on the phone with Lon Ray. Yelling could be heard over the phone, and the Okada were getting closer. And suddenly, the call with Lon Ray had dropped. Despite losing contact with Lon Ray, his friends continued their search. Before the call dropped, Lon Ray had told them he remembered seeing two burned out cars near a footpath of the Soka Forest. And so, four of his fellow Okada were getting closer. The path was narrow and required them to travel there by foot. They walked the path and made an unsettling discovery, that they were on a boneyard. However, it did seem they were close, until several shots rang out, aimed in their direction. Unfortunately, the Okada didn't know what they were up against. They hopped back on their bikes, and they drove back to town for help. The reason the Okada didn't contact the authorities in the first place was because they didn't seem interested in the first two cases of people going missing. They had to try this time though. Lon Ray was able to let people know he had been kidnapped, and that they had a strong reason to believe that they were close to finding him. With that said, the Okada took no time in waiting around, and started organizing more men to go back. Around 100 men equipped with guns, bats, and other weapons mounted their bikes and headed back to the Soka Forest. Not only did they have more men and weapons, the police would now also be involved as well. Upon re-entering the Soka Forest, the Okada wanted to make their presence clear. They began yelling and shouting while walking the path. They were now armed and confident, ready to confront whoever had fired at the first group that was there to rescue Lon Ray. The strange thing is though, The guard who was originally there was no longer there. In fact, nobody was there. The group continued and discovered what looked to be a large house in the forest. It seemed to be recently used, and the more they explored, the more unsettling things they found in the area. The Okada and the police searched through the house, finding trash and personal belongings. It's just the fact that the Okada were close-knit and had heard from Lanre that they were able to make this discovery sooner. Unless you factor in that the police were not as interested in their own investigation to begin with. So let's consider the elephant in the room. Where did everybody go, and where is Lanre? Well, the Okada continued searching for him around the house and the storage containers. They even found his bike stuffed up underneath a bridge that crossed a river. Things took an even darker turn when people who were kidnapped were found in the back of the warehouse chained up, and most of them in poor condition from a lack of food. This explains the mess in the storage containers where people were held initially, and also denying them proper hygiene. There was a reason people were being kidnapped. There was a barn outside of the house. Inside this barn, a concrete slab laid in the middle with a runoff and a bowl at the bottom of it to catch blood from any parts or organs. These details were shared by a surviving victim who was chained up in the barn, and she stated that everyone else chained up would watch 2 workers unchain them, 1 person at a time. If someone was thought to survive after the procedure, they would be taken back to the warehouse to be chained up. She also confirmed how she was kidnapped and how she ended up there. 2 men posing as officials came to her house one evening informing her she was under arrest. They played the part of being authorities well, and actually drove her from her house in Ibadan into the Soka Forest to this location where she would be trapped. A black Jeep would come and go from Ibadan to the barn. This would frequently happen around 8 p.m. at night. This person would go into the barn, grab what he needed from the people, and then take it to trade with others. As if things couldn't get more strange, the Ibadan police came in with heavy equipment to begin destroying this house of horrors. The locals were furious. There hadn't been enough time to really conduct a thorough investigation, and more exploring needed to be done. Lanre still hadn't been found, and he was known to be in an underground location. People feared more people still needed to be rescued. People began wondering if the police had any connections. There were reports of missing people to the police, outside of just the members of the Okada going missing as well. In fact, townspeople had made noise complaints regarding yelling coming from the forest at night. The police let people know that it wasn't a concern. Since this was outside of town, the police assured them it's usual that the noise happens and to not worry. I can't stress how unsettling it is that people heard yells almost on a nightly basis, and the police had people convinced that things were okay. So, understandably, after a few days, the Okada realized the police weren't moving their feet as fast as they should. They weren't moving them at all. So they took it among themselves with other townsfolk to start digging up there and to search for other survivors. Bones had been recovered, but no additional survivors were located. However, a stranger did come through that had human tongues in his possession. He swore he had nothing to do with anything related to the Soka Forest buildings or the people. After getting no helpful information, the Okada murdered him right there on the spot. Lanre wasn't turning up anywhere, which is bizarre considering how close they seemed to have got to him. On the day of the discovery, 23 survivors were rescued from the back of the warehouse and surrounding buildings. Lanre and 8 other people were expected to be found but never were. In addition, neither the ritualists or kidnappers have been held accountable or located. Many locals believe that the police and other officials were connected with this. Due to the amount of clothes and bones that were found, it's believed the amount of people who had been taken there is in the hundreds. Unfortunately, ritualists aren't new in the Ibadan area. These events in the Soka Forest took place in 2014, and as of March 2023, 16 suspected ritualists were arrested with the possession of 9 human skulls. Hopefully sooner than later, more information will be revealed for families to get closure, and those responsible held accountable. Subscribe for more bizarre horror stories. Your likes, comments, and shares give this channel support, and it's very much appreciated beyond words. Stay safe, and I'll see you with the next one.